Hello, I'm Marshall Shore, Arizona's hip historian. Today I'm joined by the Arizona State Capitol because it was recently proclaimed online to be the ugliest state capitol in America. How did that make you feel?
It makes me feel mad and upset. I'm over 115 years old, older than the state itself, and those folks at that list took a pic of my bum and called it ugly. Though I've had some work done, I don't feel that they were correct nor very polite.
You know, Capitol, you're looking quite dapper today.
Well, thank you, hip historian. I'm a humble capital, nothing too fancy. I'm all about local. My foundation that keeps me standing here was carved from our own nearby landmark, Camelback Mountain. My top came from Yavapai County, and the ground level is granite from South Mountain. But I have to boast about my copper top. It was old and dinged up. The wonderful youth across Arizona saved their pennies to buy me a new shiny copper dome. Thank you.
Who's with you today?
My children, the House and Senate. See, Arizona has grown a lot over the years. Instead of moving or getting rid of me and getting something new and fancy, they were added as needed. Some call them too modern, lacking class, but they are children of their era and show how we've grown since my territorial days.
Do you like it when people come to visit?
Oh, of course. I adore visitors. We're the home by and for the people. You can even get a tour of all 4 floors and hear the stories that make Arizona's history great.
Hello, and welcome to our Arizona Hip Historian Happy Hour Tour with Marshall Shore. I'm Leslie Watson, the AARP Arizona volunteer. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence and nearly 38 million members across the nation and over 900,000 in Arizona, AARP strengthens communities and advocates for what matters most to families: health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. In the month of April, we will focus on fraud prevention by providing specific tools and information to help consumers with knowledge and tools to spot and avoid scams. AARP is a wise friend and fierce defender of consumers. The Fraud Watch Network is here providing free resources that will help you spot scams, get guidance from fraud specialists, and help you feel more secure knowing we advocate at the federal, state, and local levels to provide consumers and enforce the law. In April, we will launch the gift card scam initiative and focus on education and awareness against this type of scam. Visit us for resources and information at www.aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork or at www.aarp.org/az. Now on to our hip historian and the happy hour tour. Take it away, Marshall.
Folks, welcome to the show. Get ready to meet your host for the night, Arizona's very own hip historian himself, Marshall Shore.
Well, hello, everyone. Good evening. I am so happy you can join us on this last happy hour of April. My gosh, you know, you blink and suddenly an entire month is gone just like that. So I am so happy that you've been able to join us. So I know some of you are watching us on Facebook or even Twitch. Everything is archived. We've been doing this show now for over a year, and all those episodes are archived on YouTube. So thank you so much for being here. Now, I always like to do a little bit about this day, what's going on. So back in 1926, Arizona was in prohibition mode. And on this date back then in 26, the Yuma County Sheriff deputies raided a dairy farm, but they found a lot more moonshine than they ever did milk. Why, they got over 200 gallons of liquor, 750 gallons of mash, and then 75 gallons of wine. So, they derailed a lot of people having a cocktail way back when. Now, it is also National Peace Rose Day. And it's like, when I was looking at days, I was like, I don't know if the Encanto Park Rose Garden has any peace roses in it, but it's a great time to go visit because it's in full bloom and looking pretty spectacular. As well, it is National Zipper Day. So, I am so glad we're able to celebrate the zipper that I know I've used multiple times today, whether it was putting on a jacket this morning or throughout the day. Now, it is also National Dance Day. So, don't forget that if you need to, you can go dance. As well as it is National Thank You Thursday, which didn't even know that was a thing, but indeed it is. So happy you can all join us on Thank You Thursday. Now, what can you expect if you've not seen the show before? Well, it's kind of a Arizona history variety show. I mean, we'll have a little bit of trivia. We do a little bit of Arizona music history. We have a show and tell because I have a house full of stuff, and a lot of it has stories connected to it, as well as we do Little Arizona, as well as there's always a cocktail. And tonight is nothing out of the ordinary. So we actually do have a spectacular cocktail, as well as then we have our guest, which I will introduce to you in just a few minutes. So if this is your first time watching, you might wonder, who is that man and why is he on my screen? Well, my name is Marshall Shore, and I moved here a little over 21 years ago. I was working in Brooklyn in a beautiful early 1900s Carnegie building and decided it was time to change and trade that for something a little bit more warm, something that didn't have to be shoveled snow-wise. I didn't have to go out and salt the sidewalks or anything because there is rarely ever ice. And so I traded that for a library in Central City South, just south of downtown. It was the Harmon Library. It was the first branch library for the city of Phoenix, built in 1950. Now, the community had this rich oral tradition of kind of how the community had evolved to where it was today. And so I am happy to say that that's kind of what got me going and thinking, well, let's talk about that modern history in a different way. And they now have a brand spanking new library that's just a few years old, and it's gorgeous. If you get a chance, I know they are now starting to open up libraries again. So I'm really excited about that because I haven't been in Burton Bar in so long, and there's things that I need to I want to get a hold of that I want for research and just go and enjoy that space. And you can also go down to Harmon Library in South Phoenix. Now, to get here, we had to load everything we own into a big orange cube, a U-Haul. Now, I think it's pretty darn cool that the International World Headquarters is right here in the Valley of the Sun. Now, when we got here, we promptly moved into a 1956 ranch. Originally, it was so many tones of beige. I'm happy to say now that it is a simplified two-tone seafoam and cantaloupe. and it's pretty much a time capsule. There's what my kitchen looks like today. All that buttercream yellow tile with matching appliances from stovetop to inset in the wall oven. And if you look close, you'll notice that there is no window in that oven. So it makes baking a little trickier because you have to be very gentle when you close those doors. Now, as soon as I got here, all I kept hearing about how there was no history here. But I knew that wasn't true because every time I go for an adventure, whether it's on foot, on my bike, in a car, I kept coming up with so many amazing people, places, and stories. And then there's that post-war boom that I think in so many ways made the Arizona that we all know and love. All those GIs that either were stationed here, trained here, or passed on their way to somewhere else. And after the war, they were moving here in huge numbers. And in some cases, looking for a house just like mine. I'm also called the hip historian. Now, you might wonder, how does one get a name like the hip historian? Well, back in February 14th, we always have a celebration for Arizona for Statehood Day. And back in 2012, it was an amazing year because it was 100 years of statehood. So there were events happening across the state, including at the main stage right in front of the old state capitol. And someone gave me 15 minutes to talk about anything I chose. And I chose to talk about one of the most favorite events that I've never been able to attend, but it was called Mask of the Yellow Moon. At its height, it had about 5,000 plus college students and high school students performing and working behind the sets. It also was amazing clothing designed by students and made by Home Economics. So I was able to borrow 3 dresses as I had convinced 3 amazing friends to parade around in those late 30s dresses. And they were beautiful. And that's pretty much kind of what I've been doing is I do a lot of tours and lectures, but you can imagine in this last year, that really didn't happen. So that's why I started doing Arizona Virtual Happy Hour. And we are doing a masked walking tour of downtown Phoenix haunted history. We actually have our last one coming up May 8th. We're going to take the summer off. So that way no one bakes. Because nobody wants to go walking around downtown leisurely when it's hot and maybe even humid. Now, I know I see some of you have discovered the chat already. I mean, we already have Sarah, Pam, and Anita have already made comments. Now, if you would like to, you are welcome to join into that chat conversation. If, say, after the show, something piques your interest and you're like, hey, I forgot to mention, you can always reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, even email, or even via my website. It's all good. And I love hearing from you. Now, if you're watching, I will ask you to click on the little share button. Now, you might wonder why, but it's so that way all your friends will get a chance to see all the fun that we are having with Arizona history. Now, I do want to welcome you to a segment called Little Arizona. Now, Little Arizona, I talk about how I moved here from New York, but I grew up in a little tiny farm town in the Midwest of 25 people. 2 roads, 1 stop sign. It was a great place to not grow old in. And so I always kind of have an affinity for those small towns. I'm also working on a book called Little Arizona. And so we are talking about Winkleman, Arizona. Now, Winkleman was founded in the late 1880s as a mining town, and it was just up the hill from Hayden, which was a mining town. Now, Winkleman derived its name from a rancher in the area. When the railroad line came through, they had to give it a name, so that's what they did. Now, it is basically it is where the Gila River comes together, and that water has always been kind of a boom as well as a detractor because they've had issues with either the Gila or the San Pedro rivers flooding lower parts of the town. Oh, and I will go back, Maddie, because it is called Winkleman. And it is down near Kearney, Dudleyville. So an old mining town. And it is, and you can see they have a bridge that was built back in 1916 that they no longer allowed to drive across. But in the 80s, it was put on the National Register of Historic Places. And so you can still walk across it and take a look and see what it looks like. And it takes you over some of that water that the town is so famous for, that gives it those views. Now, it also has an old cemetery. Now, basically, they think the oldest burial is probably 1905. The oldest headstone they've been able to find is 1910. Now, as the town it was because it was founded as it was not a company town. It became the shopping district where didn't have to be a company store that opened it up. And so that's when the town was thriving. But as the mining started to diminish, so did those businesses. And so we can still go visit Winkleman today and look forward to getting a chance to go poke around in an old cemetery. Because you can find out so much about who was there and what was going on. And be sure to take your binoculars because all that water attracts all kinds of critters, whether swimming in the water, flying in to catch something swimming in the water, or stopping to get a drink. So lots of animals to go and see. So that's always a lot of fun. And as I said, it would not be happy hour if there was not a cocktail. And I'm happy to say PJ Vader Barron, who is my cocktail advisor, he works at the Hotel Valley Ho and creates our cocktail. And so tonight we are doing a gold old fashioned, which is a little bit of tequila, a tequila liqueur. And then I'm intrigued by this pomegranate stuff because it's kind of like, from what I can gather, almost like a pomegranate molasses, which sounds quite tasty. And so let's see if I can bring on my bartender. There we go. No, it looks like he's trying to catch some flies there. So this is the gold old fashioned. And what I love is he makes it so easy. I just get to take my glass and just do that. Even this one even includes the garnish. So there you go. A golden old fashioned. So let's see. Oh, that's really nice. It's funny because it's like when I went to go pick this up today, they were talking about how it was based on someone's Christmas cocktail, and it's really good. And then you've got the Bitterman's kind of Hiver Ammer, which is heavily cinnamon. And so that's got a lot of flavor going on in it. All right. So now I am happy to say, through the miracle of modern technology, or maybe not so modern technology, I would like to bring on my friend Alberto. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Let's get rid of him because nobody wants to see a bartender who's not serving cocktails. There we go. Oh, and I see you're mute. Oh, there we go.
All right. Hey, Marshall.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to making up one of those gold fashions after we're done with this.
My gosh. I mean, it's really tasty. I mean, it's one of those fun things because I always learn about new things that I didn't even know.
All but one of the ingredients I have to look up and figure out what they are, but it looks delicious.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of flavor going on, which is really nice. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be part of your show. I'm from Arizona. My dad was stationed in Fort Huachuca down in southern Arizona, Cochise County. So I was born in Sierra Vista back in the early 70s when it was no bigger than a couple of postage stamps. It's much bigger now. Since that time, we lived other places. As you know, military families move around. But we came back to Sierra Vista when I was just about to start my junior year in high school. So I've been in Arizona since the mid 80s and came up here to go to Arizona State University. And I now work for ASU, and I run a program named after the first Latino elected to represent Arizona in Congress, Ed Pastor. So I run the Ed Pastor Center at ASU, which was created to help students learn how to get involved politically and how to do things like register voters and educate their families about what's going to be on the ballot and advocate for things they care about. But aside from that, I have a long history in working with state government agencies and tribes. And I do a lot of talking about the intersection between Arizona's Latino community and Arizona's Native American communities. So that's a bit what I'm going to be talking about today.
I know. I'm so excited to have you on because it's probably history that not a lot of people know that much about.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to share it with you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the fun of this is we get to share. And so, all right. So now we're going to launch into some trivia. Now, our trivia is a little different. And so we'll go through the questions and the answers, which are all multiple choice. So that way, even if you don't know the answer, you can throw a dart and take a good guess. Although I don't suggest to throw a dart at your screen because that's probably not going to be good for it.
I bet they'll be able to guess most of the answers correctly.
So, it's kind of rare that if that's the case, because a lot of times it's like people are usually getting like half of them right. So it'll be interesting to see how well people do.
I'd be interested in that, yeah.
So, and then we'll take a little bit of a music break and we will launch in and go through, and Alberto will tell us the stories behind some of those answers. So that way, it's not necessarily what you walk in knowing, but it's now what you walk out knowing. So that way we're all winners. And once we can actually go to cocktail parties, you can amaze your friends with all kinds of Arizona factoids that they'll have no clue about, but you will because you've been watching Arizona History Happy Hour. All right.
All right, so today's trivia is all about the Aztec community and its connection to where we live now, the state of Arizona. So the first question is about this land. Many consider the Upper Sonoran Desert, where we are here in Arizona and California, to have been the ancestral lands, the original homeland of the Mexica people, who popularly known as Aztecs. Aztec people call themselves Mexica. Before they went to central Mexico and ended up in their capital city, which is now called Mexico City, they came from this place. And so what was the name of the original homeland of the Aztec or Mexica people? Was it A, Chacmul? Was it B, Mazatzal? Was it C, Aztlan? Or D, Teotihuacan?
Yeah, exactly. So you can write down your answer, whether you want to. Some folks do it in the chat. Some folks do it on a pad and paper. You can do it if you have a hot dog bun and some mustard. You can keep track of it there, but don't take a bite out of it because you might wind up then eating your score.
You're going to need a lot of hot dog buns and mustard. Okay, so.
All right, so on to question 2.
Okay, so I believe Scottsdale must have an ordinance that half of all tourist souvenirs have to have the Cocopelli symbol on them. So true or false, the famous Cocopelli seen in petroglyphs all over our state, which are images carved into rock. That Cocopelli symbol is believed to represent the ancient Hohokam people's interaction with traveling merchants from the Aztec Empire. Is that true or false? A, true, or B, false?
And, if you go up on the 17 on the way to Arco Sante, there's a town there with the world's largest Cocopelli right there off the 17.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah. So it's always, and there's a good little stop there. You've got a coffee shop. There's a Mexican restaurant. So it's a great little stop off just to kind of get a nosh and a potty break. All right. So on to question 3.
Okay, and question 3 is talking about creation stories, the ancient stories that all tribes have that they pass on from generation to generation, that talks about where they came from and the stories about the gods and and all of creation. So this question says the Mexica or Aztec creation stories share a lot of common elements and characters in common with which of these tribes from Arizona? Is it A, the Hopi tribe, B, the Navajo and Apache tribes, C, the O'odham tribes, including Salt River, Gila River, Akchin, and Tohono O'odham, or D, all of the above? So which tribes share some similar stories with the Mexica or Aztec people?
All right. So moving on to question 4.
Okay, there's another true and false. So after the Spanish came and they conquered the Aztec Empire, is it true or false that the language spoken by the Aztec people, Nahuatl, and their cultural traditions were completely wiped out? A, true, or B, false?
All right. So which do you think it is? Is it true or false? All right. Coming up to that halfway point, question 5.
Okay, 5 is about animals. So a lot of the animals we have here in Arizona, you will also find represented in Aztec imagery. So in the codices, the libraries of scrolls with art that recorded a lot of the doings and the history of the Aztec people, in artwork, in carvings, in ruins, and those kinds of things, you'll see a lot of animals that you see here in Arizona. One of those was commonly used to represent the god of warfare, which is called Huitzilopochtli. So which animal that we see here in Arizona commonly represents the god of warfare and warriors? Was it A, coyote, B, hummingbird, C, javelina, or D, rattlesnake?
That's a good question. And especially now as things are warming up, it's like some of those you might actually see if you're out on a morning hike.
That's right.
So
watch where you put your hands.
Exactly.
All right. The next question is about architecture. So which architectural feature that is commonly associated with the Aztec cities and constructions can be found in ruins across Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and beyond? And that's my dog barking. I don't know why. Quiet.
I say it sounds like a ferocious beast. Maybe that should have been one of the alternate answers for 5 was ferocious dog.
Yes, rescue dogs. So is it flying buttresses? That's A, B, steam baths, C, ball courts, or D, water slides?
So yeah, and you do find them all over Arizona.
Yes.
All right, moving on to question 7.
Yes. So 7 asks, which of the tribal communities now in Arizona has hosted Aztec dancers from all over the U.S. and Mexico for the annual spring blessing ceremony called Xipetotec, going on over 30 years now. Every year, one of these tribes hosts Aztec dancers for this spring ceremony. Is it the A, Hopi tribe, B, the Zuni, C, Tohono O'odham, or D, Pasquayaqui?
Wow, that's a long time for over 30 years. All right, question 8.
Okay, so the first of the modern dance groups that practice the Aztec prayer dance tradition in Arizona has been practicing continuously here since the early 80s. And they do so based out of one of the reservations in the Phoenix metropolitan area. So is it A, the Salt River Pima Maricopa, B, Fort McDowell Yavapai, C, Gila River, or D, the Akchin community? So it's one of these. Which one plays home to the oldest of the contemporary Aztec dance groups?
All right, and we're coming to the home stretch now.
Okay, 9. After the conquest, Aztecs were able to pass on and practice their prayer dances for centuries, but they had to do so in strict secrecy. Was that because A, what they wore, the attire of the dancers, was viewed as indecent and offensive? Is it B, because women were prohibited from leading religious practices, which often happen in the Aztec dance practice? Was it C, illegal not legal to conduct native spiritual practices? Or D, is it that they didn't want other people to copy their sacred dances? So which of those is the reason why Aztec prayer dances were passed on in strict secrecy?
Ah, and I know there's a story behind that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So our last question.
Featuring a very old picture of yours truly from, I believe, 1992. Was printed in the state press currently. So almost exactly 30 years later. Oh my gosh. How many Aztec dance groups are there now in Arizona? A, are they all gone? There's none left. B, 1, C, 4, or D, more than a dozen? What do you think? How many Aztec dance groups are there in our state?
Wow. So while you are all going through trying to remember if you want to change an answer or not, here is your chance to lock in your final answers. And while you're doing that, we're going to talk a little bit about some Arizona music history. Now, last week we talked about the Arizona March Song, which is one of the official state songs. The other one, which I'm not able to play today, but it was called I Love My Arizona. Now, it was originally written by Rex Allen Jr. Now, his father was that famous cowboy, Rex Allen. But, you know, Rex Allen Jr. went on to, he started singing at the age of 6, picked up the guitar, and became quite the musician. And that song, I Love Arizona, was adopted in 2012 as the official anthem of Centennial back in 2012. Now, because he was part of that show business family, I mean, that's how he got such an early start. And he's had a slew of albums playing with himself as well as with other groups. He also has not just been limited to music, but his voice. He actually basically narrated the Jim Carrey movie, Me, Myself, and Irene. He also was the voice of WD-40, as well as Mahindra tractors. So he also was in 2006, was one of the first performers to ever play on the China Wall because they brought in the Great American Cowboy China Tour. And so they got to stand near the wall, on the wall, and perform, which I think would be pretty cool to see. And I'm not able to play his music because it's too recent and it's still in copyright, and I couldn't get a hold of him to get his okay to play the music. So I would prefer not to take that risk. All right. So now who's ready for some answers?
Before the answers, I just have to say, if you haven't been to Rex Allen Days in Wilcox, you need to go check it out. There's also actually a Rex Allen Museum.
There is, exactly, yeah.
And while you're there, pick up apple cider, apple butter, every apple product you can think of. It's just a delightful place. Check it out.
And I know last time I went for Rex Allen Days, they were actually having a wine festival on at the same time. So yeah, there was a bit of wine to sample.
Yeah, yeah.
So I partook of some of that as well. So lots of fun to be had in Wilcox. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to things opening up again, and being able to chance to take a road trips and go visit so many of the towns that we've been talking about. All right. So let's go on to question 1.
So I think a lot of you guessed this correctly. The homeland, the original homeland of the Aztec or Mexica people is called Aztlan, which in its language means the place where there are herons or egrets. And you'll see I put in a picture there. That's actually a picture from Tempe Town Lake. If you hang out by Tempe Town Lake, you'll see them there all the time. Those nice, tall, elegant, white-looking waterfowl are egrets. And so the name of the Aztec homeland means where there are egrets or herons. So Aztlan, and that's actually where the word Aztec comes from. It's a misnomer that it's believed that Spaniards asked them where they were originally from because it was known they weren't originally from Mexico City, which was at that time called Tenochtitlan. They said, well, where did you come from? And they told them their homeland was Aztlan, so they called them Aztecs. But they're actually Mexica people, which is, the word Mexica is where the name Mexico comes from. It's named after the Mexica people. Okay.
Ah, all right.
All right, Kokopelli is such an interesting story. So the petroglyphs are thought by many, there's not unanimous consensus, but there's significant and you should know my bachelor's degree was in anthropology, social cultural anthropology, and one of my areas of focus was Indians of the Southwest. And I was just fascinated with all the intersection between the history of my people and the history of tribes in this part of the country. So there is a theory that many people believe the Kokopelli petroglyphs are evidence of the interaction between the Aztec foot traveling merchants that went as far north and east as Kansas. You'll find evidence of the Aztec foot traders bringing goods from central Mexico and even from as far south as Guatemala and Costa Rica up into North America to trade with tribes all along the way. It is believed that along with trade and commerce, they were also spying and collecting reconnaissance. Where were their settlements? How many people were there? How did they live? What goods and things did they have? What was their military strength? Those kinds of things. But they traveled on foot for thousands of miles, and they just were constantly moving and traveling and bringing goods back and forth. But they carried everything on their backs, and they wore these big feathered headdresses, and they played wooden flute instruments to announce their arrival, kind of like the ice cream truck when it's ringing and people come running out with their cash. Partly why that is believed to be, these Kokopelli images are believed to represent the Aztec merchants. It was because in those times, none of the tribes that existed here in this part of the country, they didn't typically wear headdresses with feathers. Indians with headdresses are more what we would see farther north and east, like the Plains tribes or north into the Dakotas. But Southwest Indians, Navajo, Apache, Hopi, they didn't tend to wear big feathered headdresses, and they didn't tend to play flute wind instruments. So those things are associated with tribes in central Mexico or the Aztecs. When you see them on these carvings all over South Mountain, all over Arizona, you tend to see some common things. They have a big headdress, they're playing a flute, they're kind of hunched over, or they have rounded backs, which is believed to represent those packs full of goods for trade. By anatomically interesting, what you don't see in the modern Scottsdale tourism souvenir version of Kokopelli, but you do see on the rocks, they're very obviously males that are in a state of excitement, I should say. And so there's some debate by anthropologists about whether that means, what that means. Is it a warning, watch your women when these people show up in your towns, or does it mean that they were viewed as some kind of semi-godlike fertility, blessings or something like that? Also, interestingly, these images are often, you see them depicted with dogs, like you see in the upper right-hand corner. There's often dogs with them. That also is suggesting that it may be, that lends, in my view, strength to the idea that they're Aztecs, because Aztecs commonly traveled with dogs, a specific breed called Xoloitzcuintli, which is now a popular breed among some dog people because they're hairless, and people that are allergic to dogs often get that breed. The Aztecs used them because they were easy to care for. They fed themselves, they traveled along, so they're good travel companions. But if you were in a pinch and you didn't have any food, they didn't really have any qualms about eating them. So that's the Kokopelli. It is believed by many to represent the Hohokams' interaction with traveling merchants. All right, creation stories. So the Mexica creation stories, the Aztec creation stories, actually share characters and plot elements and gods with similar characteristics that you find in the creation stories of all of these tribes that we currently have in Arizona. In fact, I was at an event. I happened to sit next to the chairman of the Hopi tribe at the time, and I introduced myself to him and shook his hand, and I said, I'm with the Mexica people. That's my ancestry, and our beliefs. We believe that we are related to you and your people. And he said, we believe the same thing. And he told me he started relating several things from the Hopi creation stories that we find in the Aztec creation stories. And it was just a beautiful moment for me. So for me, that's been something that's been fascinating to find, are those points of commonality and intersection.
Well, and I think the creation stories through all the different communities that have been here are really interesting in terms of how they were viewing the land, how they related to other people. So, I mean, I love reading some of those creation stories. So, and you're right, and there are lots of intersections for those.
If you get a chance to go up to the Navajo Community College, it's called Diné College up in Saline in northern Arizona. They have a beautiful museum that has a 3D depiction of the Navajo creation story. It's amazing.
Oh, really? I'm such a sucker for a diorama. Oh my gosh.
This is a diorama you can walk through. It is gorgeous. Similarly, the Northern Arizona Museum in Flagstaff has a beautiful Hopi creation story mural that is just astonishing. So highly recommend checking those out.
Oh my gosh. Oh, diorama, here I come.
Okay. True or false, was the Aztec language wiped out? Not, absolutely not. In fact, still today in Mexico, the second most spoken language in Mexico is Nahuatl. It's not English. A lot of people speak English, but it's Spanish is the first most spoken language in Mexico, followed by Nahuatl, the Aztec language. And increasingly, more and more Latinos here in Arizona are seeking to learn Nahuatl and take that back up again as a way of reconnecting to their indigenous heritage. Cultural traditions as well continue to be passed on. There are whole villages and towns that are still Aztec or Mexica villages throughout southern Mexico. And there are people here in Arizona that are studying and learning and passing on those cultural traditions as well. So very much still alive. These communities still persist.
Which I think is great.
And which animal in Arizona represents the god of war? It is the hummingbird, which surprises a lot of people, unless you're familiar with hummingbirds. If you have a feeder, you're a bird watcher, and you spend a lot of time watching hummingbirds, you'll know them to be pretty aggressive little birds. They're cute and tiny, and they can be mean. So they can be very territorial and very possessive of food sources. But the hummingbird is a big figure in the Aztec creation stories. He figures in prominently in how fire was brought to the land and given to the people. It's a long story. I don't have time to tell you now, but hummingbird is pretty much a badass for Aztec people. But I've also found most native tribes in the Southwest also ascribe a lot of important qualities to the hummingbird. And he is commonly associated with the gods and with creation and those kinds of things. So the hummingbird is nothing to sneeze at. He's tiny and mighty. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's such an important figure for Mexica or Aztec people in the past as well as today.
Well, and also I would say fearless. I mean, it's like they will do things that's like, oh my gosh. I mean, to protect their territory, to protect their food. So they'll go after larger birds, not even a question.
Yeah, and if you're threatening their nest and you may not know it, you're getting too close to their nest, they'll get right in your face and chirp at you. You're pretty angry, like, get away. So I just love it. I'm fascinated with hummingbirds. Somebody asked in the chat, where's the diorama we were talking about? There's one in Saline, in northern Arizona on the Navajo Nation. There's the Navajo College, which was the first Indian college in the country. So back in the 70s, I think it was 1974, Navajo Nation created their own community college. It was the first Indian college, and now there are many. So now in Arizona, we have Navajo, we have the Diné College on the Navajo Nation. There's Navajo Technical Institute that's on the New Mexico side of the Navajo Nation. We have the San Carlos Apache Community College, and there's one down in Tohono-O'odham. They have their own community college as well. But the first in the nation among tribes to have a college was Navajo Nation. And so that college, Diné College, D-I-N-E, like the word dine, Diné College in northern Arizona, has a museum. And as part of that museum, it's open to the public. You can go during their hours. They have a huge exhibit with paintings and carvings and sculptures that represent their creation story, and it's really worth checking out.
Wow, thank you for that. That is such a great tip.
Okay, I think we're close to the end.
And well, we're question 6.
Oh, no,
So
we're not.
we're kind of on that downward slope
Ball.
now. We're just
So,
over the peak.
right,
And
right.
so
So, which feature from common to Aztec cities can you find all over Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado? It's the ball court. So the ball game was a game that was it's hard to overstate its importance in Aztec culture and society. It was played similar to hockey, only you couldn't touch the ball. It was a hard rubber ball. It was batted around by the player's hips, and you had to try and get it through a very small stone circular enclosure. So I guess like a combination of hockey and basketball. Sorry about the dogs. But yeah, you can find versions of that ball court in ruins all over the Southwest. And there's here the Pueblo Grande Museum, which is an amazing place to visit, right by the airport.
yes,
Right
exactly.
4th Street in Washington. There's a Pueblo Grande Museum with Hohokam ruins. You can see a ball court there. And it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love that museum is so close,
Mm-hmm.
and that if you have a long layover at the airport, hey, it's worth checking out.
And a quick tip, if you're ever in need of a last-minute gift for a wedding, a housewarming party, a birthday, whatever, and you forgot, go to the gift shop at the Pueblo Grande Museum. They have beautiful things there representing the tribes in this area that don't cost that much, and it makes you look like an incredibly thoughtful person. So check it out. It's my go-to when I'm in an emergency and I need a gift for somebody. It makes me look like a good guy.
That's right. Alberto's helpful hint. Nice. Maybe we should start a regular segment on that.
Yeah. Okay, which tribe has hosted the Aztec Spring Ceremony for over 30 years? It's the Pascua Yaqui community here in Guadalupe. So I love to tell people about Guadalupe. It's just south of Tempe. If you've ever been to the Arizona Mills Mall off I-10 and Baseline Road, you're right at the border of the Pascua Yaqui community called Guadalupe. They have hosted the Aztecs there because we don't have our own reservation or community. We don't have land in Arizona, so everything we do, we have to do as guests of one of the tribes here. So the Yaqui community in Guadalupe, Pascua Yaqui, actually the word Pascua means Easter. So Pascua Yaqui are the Easter Yaquis. And a lot of their spiritual traditions revolve around the celebration of the Easter holiday. And so many times the Yaqui are having their own Easter ceremonies at the same time as the Aztecs are having their spring ceremonies. There's a huge plaza in the center of Guadalupe by their church. And so sometimes you'll see it divided, and on one half of the plaza, the Yaquis are doing their special spiritual dances, and on the other side, you'll see maybe as many as 100 Aztec dancers doing their ceremonies at the same time. It's an amazing sight. It astonishes me that people don't know about this. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever been a part of. I think the challenge for a lot of tourists is that you're not allowed to take pictures or videotape it. So it's so beautiful, you want to capture it, but you just have to capture it with your mind, because the Yaqui do not allow pictures and video of their spiritual traditions.
And there is a library in Guadalupe as well.
Yes.
I used to work at that sometimes. So
the tribal offices are right there as well. But yes, every year the Aztec group asks for permission to the elders of the Yaqui community, and every year they say, please come. And it's just an amazing thing. So it's usually in late March or early April.
Very good.
Okay, and so the first group to bring Aztec dance back to Arizona since the 80s is actually based out of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. So just east of Scottsdale, north of Mesa, that big chunk of land is the Salt River Reservation. And the two women who were taught by the Aztec elders from Mexico and were given the authority, it's called the palabra in Spanish, which is like saying the spiritual right or authority to teach and practice the Aztec prayer dances. They learned and they brought it back. And one of the two main ladies that runs that program since the 80s was married to an elder of the Pima tribe at the Salt River community. So she was allowed to live there and has hosted the Aztec group called Yoloincuautli, which means white eagle. Has been based out of the Salt River tribe since I think 1983. And she continues to dance. She's an elderly lady now, and she's an amazing figure. You see her out there with her long white hair just dancing like thunder, and it's an incredibly inspiring thing to me.
All right.
Why was the Aztec prayer dance tradition passed on in strict secrecy? It was because you could be killed. After the Spaniards and the Catholic Church came in, they prohibited any indigenous spiritual practices. They were viewed as demonic or satanic. And so it was in the eyes of the conquerors, witchcraft for the Aztecs to continue to dance their sacred prayer dances. So as I've alluded to in the past, the dances, quote unquote dances, are done as prayers. Each dance has a different prayerful meaning. And so the dances are done not to have fun, but as a form of sharing prayer as a community. And that has been passed on in secrecy for centuries until about 200 years ago. The Aztec groups all over Mexico started to be able to practice them in public, and then began to teach others who brought the traditions up here into the United States. But yeah, it was the consequences, if you were discovered, were dire. You could be at minimum jailed and tortured, but probably you would be executed as well for continuing those things. So that's why all the secrecy. There's an allusion in one of the clues there. One of the wrong answers talks about women not leading in spiritual practices. That is kind of true as well. Catholics and Christians for several centuries really were not friendly to women having leadership positions in religious roles. Whereas in many indigenous tribes, including the Aztec people, women often held leadership positions and continue to do so. And I think last question. Yes, last question. How many dance groups are there right now in Arizona? I'm not even sure, but it's at least a dozen, probably closer to 15. There are, just here in the Phoenix metropolitan area, I believe there are 6. There's a few in Tucson. There's, I think, a few further south in southern Arizona, some in northern Arizona. And there's some, I don't even know how many, that are associated with specific churches, Christian churches. So I mentioned how a few hundred years ago, Aztec dance started to be public again. And that was mostly because the dances were then done in a way that was repurposed as Christian practices, Catholic practices. So different Aztec dance groups were associated with specific Catholic Church parishes, and they had different sponsoring saints. And so they were now not viewed as pagan anymore, because instead of being a dance named after or dedicated to Huitzilopochtli or Ehecatl, the gods of war, or the god of the wind, it was now a dance for Saint Teresa or the Virgin Mary or things like that. So they were Catholicized applications of these ancient, centuries-old dances, but it was now sanctioned because it was now held within the Catholic Christian tradition. So here in Arizona, I know there are at least a few Catholic and Protestant churches that have Aztec groups. These tend to be churches where the congregants are largely immigrants from Mexico and Central America. And some of them are evangelical, others are Catholics. So I'm not really connected at all with the Christian church-based Aztec groups, but I know there are several of those. So that's why I know there's at least 12-ish in Arizona, probably at least 15, maybe more than that. Nobody even really knows. So there are a lot of Aztec dancers in our state continuing these traditions and passing on this culture and these practices.
So if somebody who was watching wanted to, as the world is opening up again, say maybe next year, get a chance to go see one of the Aztec dance groups, how would they find out about them?
There's that's a little more possible now than it was before, because they're on Facebook. So one of the group I danced with for over 20 years is on Facebook, and so they will commonly post about the spring ceremony when they'll announce that they're going to be holding it in Guadalupe on a certain date and time. Or there are other ceremonies that they host here in Arizona. In December, there's one for the Virgin Mary that a lot of groups come together and host. Glendale Community College often has a group from the West Valley called Coatlicue perform in October for the community college has, during Hispanic Heritage Month, different speakers and events. And almost every year they have that group come out and perform and talk about the Aztec dance tradition. On Facebook, for the group that I was with, I don't know how to put in the chat because it's hard for people that are not familiar to spell it out. But it's called Yolo Incuautli, which means Heart of the Eagle. They're on Facebook, and if you follow them, you could find out about things happening. Otherwise, you can probably just in Facebook just search for Aztec dance and see what comes up. We also often would commonly perform Aztec dance as part of the cultural celebrations and events held by the tribes all around the state, especially Fort McDowell tribe north of Scottsdale, right off north of Fountain Hills. They have an annual celebration, which is another amazing thing to go to, called the Orm Dam Victory Days. And people always say, Orm Dam, where's Orm Dam? The victory is that there is no Orm Dam. The tribe fought efforts to build a dam which would have flooded more than half of their reservation. And they were successful in stopping the dam from being constructed. So every year, Fort McDowell Yavapai tribe has a big celebration that there's no dam. And the Aztec groups often are part of what they do there. Salt River has their cultural celebrations, Akchin, Hopi, Navajo. So a lot of the tribes around Arizona have cultural events that are open to the public, and oftentimes you'll see Aztec dancers as part of those things as well. I don't think I can put in the chat. I was going to type out the name, but I don't know how to do that. I can put it in private chat. Maybe Marshall can copy paste.
Yeah, if you can send it to me in private chat, then I can go through, because I think that would be really fun to go out to like Guadalupe and see the dance out there.
Yeah. Okay. I found the Facebook page. I'm going to put the link in the private chat and you can share it with your audience.
All right. So I will put the open. Actually, there's the link. All right. All right. So there is the Facebook link for the group that Alberto. So now this is the group you used to dance with, correct?
Yes.
So yeah, so this is your group that you used to dance with. And so if you'd like to track them down to see when they'll be performing, go right ahead and like them. So see, and people know the drill. They always get asked, well, how did you do? And it's like, I mean, it's like some people got like 7 out of 10.
That's really good.
Which I think is great.
Yeah. Impressed. Well, I thought some of them would be obvious. So yeah, I'm very glad, not too surprised to see people did so well.
So yeah, well, and it was, I mean, and such good questions as well as such good background information as well. So I know I've gotten several comments about how this was so informative, and that's really the whole reason why we do it, is because of that. Is so that way, because there's a whole state that we can go and enjoy.
Yeah.
And we should all know a little bit more about it.
Do you want to see my headdress? I have it right here.
Oh yeah.
So,
I was wondering if it was nearby.
This is Quincy, my model. He is my headdress holder. But this is the last headdress that I made when I was still dancing. The feathers are all out of place. I really need to take better care of this. But each dancer, I'm trying to figure out how to move it on the camera.
I know, because don't look at the camera and try and do it, other than just to get it on
tradition.
screen.
Each dancer makes their own attire, and it is meant to represent things that are personally significant or have relevance for the dancer. In my case, my birth symbol is the Malinali symbol, which can be represented different ways, but mostly it is shown as a skull that has a crown of grasses and flowers that is growing from it. And it is a representation of how life comes from what lived before. So new life comes from what has died as reborn and becomes new life. And so my headdress is a stylized skull with mother of pearl eyes, and this is a crown of grasses. And the back of it also is a version of that Malinali. So you can see the grasses. This shell here represents bone or death, giving birth to new life. And these are flowers and things like that, little bells that jingle. And those are my dogs saying they want me to let them out. This flat part here in the back has a lot of pockets for feathers. And my office is too small to have the feathers on them, but they're usually very long, like 4 feet long pheasant feathers that form a huge fan behind the head of the dancer. And it catches the wind, and it's very dramatic. So this is my headdress. I haven't danced in years, but I keep it because I don't know what else to do with it. It's a part of me. But each dancer has an outfit that represents things that are especially meaningful for them. So if you do get to see Aztec dancers, I encourage you to go up and introduce yourself and talk to them and maybe ask about what they're wearing, because most dancers would love to tell you. They'd love to tell you the story of what they put together.
I didn't realize the costume or the outfit was so personalized.
Some modern dancers just buy their stuff made from some artisan in Mexico, and I kind of look sideways at that, because the way I was taught the tradition, you're supposed to make it yourself. It's part of the earning the right to learn and perform those sacred ancient dances, is investing in it, investing yourself in it, and a lot of that is represented in how you put together what you wear.
Wow. So, Alberto, thank you so much for coming on and engaging us with such great stories, and even a little bit about you personally, and sharing your headdress with you and kind of some of the stories behind that as well.
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I love talking about this stuff.
So, indeed, that's why I knew you would be really good at it. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
I will let you go let your dogs out.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
You too. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So now, in case you're wondering why you should click on that share button, now you see why you should click on that share button, because where else are you going to get some of that information and some of those stories? So I think we give another big round of applause for Alberto. I mean, last time I saw him talk on this, he didn't go into the artistry of his own headdress. He just pointed to it and said, "Oh, that's my headdress." I love the fact that he took that little bit of extra time and just shared how it is such a personal piece of him. So thank you so much, Alberto. Look forward to seeing you soon. And also, we probably should get a group together at some point to maybe go out to Guadalupe and see, because I have a feeling they'll probably be doing their Easter dance. So that would be kind of fun. So, all right. So now we are at our moment of show and tell, because I have a lot of stuff. And I'm actually going to be getting some more stuff because I have a workspace downtown. The building has sold. So I'm going to slowly I don't know how slowly, but I need to be getting stuff out of there. But so this is stationery for the hotel lures. Now, if you're going to be looking for the hotel lures, there is the Lures Hotel, which is now a thing. But this was a building this building was originally built in 1887. And it was indeed a commercial hotel. Let's see if we can get a little bit better photo of that. And in 1916, a huge portion of it burned, but the family was so invested in downtown that they came back, and the building lasted until 1981. It is now on the site of where Cityscape is. So just kind of diagonally from that whole Lures complex. So, I mean, I was so excited to get a hold of original stationery from the old hotel. So I've got 3 pieces. So, which those probably should go in a frame at some point, but right now they are not. They're actually in the banker's box that I got them in. So that's where I keep them. And the other cool thing is, I'm assuming also, since it was all together, see, and here's the banker's box that it all came in. It also has some soap. So Lure soap. I don't think I would use that, as well as some envelopes. But as well as what I thought was really cool, it also came with the door hangers. Do not disturb with the bellhop on it. So that was a pretty cool, kind of impressive collection to get, all about the Lures Hotel. That was in downtown Phoenix. The Lures buildings are still there. The tower and center are still there. So coming up next week, we have my friend Lynn Gutman, and he is with Special Olympics of Arizona, talking about Special Olympics and its history here in Arizona and across the country. So that should be a lot of fun. And I always want to remind you, if you have any comments, stories, suggestions, please let me know, because that's where some of my best stuff comes from, is all of you saying, hey, have you reached out to this person? So again, if you think of something after happy hour and you can no longer put it in the chat, you can still reach out to me through email, Facebook, or even Instagram, depending on your preference. It all works for me. Now, I always like to give a shout out to the intro, which was, the video was done by my friend Chris Allen. The music was originally composed by Cole Travis. As well as then my amazing cocktail advisor, PJ. Thank you so much for the collaborative cocktail, the Gold Old Fashioned. And for outro music, we're going to hear from Mr. Jose Orchestratica, a Sunny Slope guy who now lives in the East Coast with lots of music under his belt. So thank you all so much, and have a great and amazing evening and weekend.